All right, good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to another episode of Power Solutions. You know, like we do every week on this show, we bring you ideas, conversations, to talk about what's happening in the power sector, what is new, what is fresh, and what you should know powering, using solar or powering your home and just help yourself from all the NEPA wahala. You understand? All right. My name is Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo, and this is Power Solutions. Today we are discussing building a sustainable off-grid sector. And I have my Oga and my boss on today. He used to host, and today is my guest, and I'm his host. That's cool.
That's how it's supposed to be, right? I trained you, and now you're interviewing me.
You know? All right. So today we're having interesting conversations. I know a lot of people want to sort of hear what we are talking about today. And for some of you who know, Dr. Wiebe is my guest. He's CEO of AllOn. And Dr. Wiebe is already leaving us. But today we want to have him to talk about how his experience has been and what he has done so far for the sector for AllOn. And all the amazing work today. We'll be asking him all the many questions. All right. So again, if you're just tuning in, this is Power Solutions. My name is Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo. And Wiebe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's been a while.
It's been a while. We missed you.
It's been in good hands. It's been in very good hands.
For sure. And I miss my buddy Collins.
Yeah.
We've been running this for a while since you left.
Yeah.
But we're happy how far we have come. And good to have you on the other seat today.
All right. It's good to be here.
All right. So how would you like to describe your journey? How has it been like for you the last 5 years? And the AllOn story. What would you say?
It's only a 30-minute show.
30 minutes. There's a lot to talk about, but it's only 30 minutes. But we'll try to move as fast as we can. You know the drill.
Well, so the journey, when I started here 5 years ago, started at AllOn 5 years ago, this industry, the renewable industry, and then sort of the whole concept of off-grid energy was really new.
Okay.
At that point, we were still where everyone just thought the only solution is the grid, and the government needs to just keep investing, and private sector needs to keep investing, and at some point the grid will be fixed and will save us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've come to realize over the last 5 years that the grid is actually worse than it even was 5 years ago. It's worse than it was.
That's collapsed 17 times this year alone.
Right, and I mean that's just ridiculous. And you remember, we have to remember that an electricity grid is a technology from 150 years ago. This is not rocket science.
Yeah.
This is basically like pumping water. It's not hard.
Oh.
And yet somehow we've figured out a way to make it not work in Nigeria. And I have hypotheses as to why, but it's just the reality. So I think we need to. We've now, during this 5 years, we've gone from the point of saying that's the solution to realize it's all of these other approaches that are actually going to be the solution.
Okay.
And that it's the companies that are doing off-grid solar, everything from the battery as a service, solar home systems. Those are for like the mass market.
Yeah.
The solar energy systems for small businesses, and then mini grids and undergrids and all of that.
Okay.
And then commercial and industrial. And over time, as states are starting to also take over the regulatory ownership of power. It's breaking that federal monopoly over power, and I think that's where the solution is going to be. And so eventually, and I would say maybe in 3 to 5 years, let's say by 2025, I think some of the discos as we know them today will either go bankrupt. Well, some of them are already bankrupt. Yola and Ibadan, I think, already went bankrupt once. Others, I think, will just collapse, or even some of these off-grid companies will now backward integrate and take them over. And so I think we've now seen that the off-grid is actually what the future is and not the grid.
Well, where's the AllOn story in all of this?
So AllOn, we've had a very specific investment focus on the lower end of the market. So we do everything from battery as a service, solar home systems, solar energy systems, and mini grids. We don't do the large-scale industrials. We don't do like the IPPs.
Okay.
And so I think in our part of the market, we've been able to invest in almost 50 companies.
50, yeah.
And have really seeded the whole industry in many ways. Because many of the companies that people now know today as leaders in this industry are ones that we first invested in, or one of the first investors. And in some of them, we did an angel investment and then did a follow-on, and are really kind of tracking them as they grow. And so AllOn has done a lot to kind of really make the sector take off at that level. But I think the other part too is that we've also invested in innovation. So when we started, there was nothing like solar energy systems. There was nothing like manufacturing of solar components. There was nothing like payment systems for solar. And through our work and our investments, we've kind of created the whole ecosystem.
All right.
But then one more point on this, and this is the one I'm most excited about. Of the 50 investments we've made, about 40 of them have been in fully owned Nigerian homegrown companies, and mostly young Nigerian entrepreneurs, like almost like your age or maybe a bit older, but like really young, 20s, early 30s.
Yes.
And we've done it in a way that it's now the young Nigerian innovators that are actually leading this industry, and that is what I'm most proud of.
We'll touch all those areas as we go on in the conversation. If you're just tuning in, this is Power Solutions. Power Solutions is powered by AllOn Energy Investment Company in partnership with Nigeria Info FM, your number one talk station. So you've not missed much, and we have in the studio here Dr. Wiebe Boer, CEO AllOn. Really cool, right? Okay, so now for every investment we go into, we like to say, or for every investment AllOn goes into, it's like unlocking access to energy for Nigerians. And I see that in every investment AllOn announce, So, but tell us really, what has been the guiding principle for every AllOn investment? People like to ask these questions a lot because they see a lot of investment AllOn is doing, and they wonder, what exactly do you look out for, as AllOn before you go into an investment? What are those principles that have guided the investment?
So the first one is actually, I believe it's what any investor looks at, and that's the team. Whether the founding team, it can be just a CEO, or it can be a CEO and some other co-founders. And you see this team, is this a team that has the hustle, has the energy, has the persistence to actually build something when things get difficult? Is this a team that understands how difficult the sector is and knows that this isn't about making fast money, but that this is about long-term investment of time, energy, and money? And so that's the first thing is the team, right? And any investor will tell you that in the end, it's not really the business or the business model, it's the team.
Your team.
So that's the first thing. But then secondly, do they have a product or a service that can close the energy access gap in a meaningful way? So if someone comes to us and says, I want funding because I want to do one mini grid and that's it, well, that's not interesting. If they come to us and say, we want funding because we want to do one mini grid, and then we have plans to now scale to 100 in the next year, even though that's overly ambitious, that's more what we're looking for than just one off and then go do something else. And then also, is it a business that fits the Nigerian market?
The Nigerian market.
Because often, sometimes you'll see international players that have done have done work in the off-grid energy sector, maybe in East Africa, Congo, or in India, or somewhere maybe South America, and then they think their product will automatically translate to Nigeria. And our wahala is different.
Our wahala plenty.
Our wahala is very different, and our regulation is unique. Everything is unique, and so often they
see a market in Nigeria and they just want to come,
but they don't understand that our market is so unique. And so that's often why we prioritize the local innovators, because they get Nigeria and what it means to succeed in Nigeria. So really, those are the things. Can the team do this? Can they make it work? Is it a business model that makes sense? And then secondly, is it a business model that makes sense in Nigeria, and can it grow? Great.
So we have enough investments. About 50 we'll talk about, or would have talked about, but I want to pick one that we recently announced, and that is the 500K investment in Greenwich technology.
$500,000. Make sure you say that. Maybe naira or not dollars.
Sorry, $500K dollars investment in Greenwich Technologies. And now I know you are very passionate about this deal because the founders are really young, like you mentioned before. But tell us, because in press statement you said that the investment is at the core of AllOn's commitment to invest in youth-driven Nigerian companies like Greenwich to accelerate the sector growth and distribute and contribute to the closing of energy gap. What do you mean by this? Why this statement?
So let me unpack the deal a little bit. So Greenwich is a company that manufactures solar components, or like solar inverters and charge control systems, and these are basic items that you need for a solar installation. Now most everybody just imports them from China, but these guys, starting while they were at University of Nigeria in Nsukka, there were 5 of them actually that came together. They were all students, and they came up with this idea: let's start making these things here and let's try. And they figured out how to make the inverter systems 20% cheaper than what it would cost to import from China.
Inverter systems.
Inverters, and the only thing they import is the microchips. Everything else is is made locally. So it is manufacturing. It isn't just assembly. And we first heard about them when they reached out as university students and said, we've heard about AllOn. how can you help us learn?
They were still in school at this point.
Learn and integrate into the sector and all that. These were still students, so like early 20s. And so that's how the relationship started. Then in 2019, 2019, they applied for the USADF challenge, the challenge that we do with the U.S. Africa Development Foundation, and we're one of the winners, and so got $100,000 of blended finance from us and the USADF, and they used that very well, and they delivered, as promised.
They met all the milestones.
They met all the milestones.
Mm-hmm.
But then I visited them in 2021 in Enugu. I had gone there for some personal thing, and I just said, look, let me spend time with these guys. And I just loved the way they understood their market and understood, every client and potential client, why they won, why they didn't. These are for installation. They took me to their factory, and it was very rudimentary, but it made sense. And it was all young people. And one of the founding CEO, who's now in charge of business development, because they like rotate.
They rotate. Okay.
And his name is Uche, and he said to me, look, Wiebe, AllOn was set up to help Nigeria, but 90% of your money goes to China. And that is one of the things that stuck with me, and also made me realize how much you can learn from the youth. Sometimes, we old people with all our education and big grammar, we think, but it's often the wisdom from the youth that actually makes you realize what you. So when I heard, he reminded me that we really need to double down on not just investing in the youth, but investing in domesticating the supply chain. So we've already done an investment in a solar manufacturing plant here in Lagos. That's Oxano.
Oxano, yeah.
So, and this will be the second one for local manufacturing. But what it means now is that when you are a solar developer in Nigeria, you can buy your panels from Oxano in Naira.
You can buy the components from Greenwich.
And buy the inverters and the charge controls from Greenwich. It actually reduces what you have to import. And the next thing we need is battery systems and all that to be done locally. And then all of the issues around foreign exchange and all that will be solved. But it also means more and more of the money is staying here at home in Nigeria.
Wow. I want to see I can imagine what the future will look like if we have more of this. But now this leads me to my next question. Raising finance or raising funds is always a big issue. And support structures and seed money for startups in Africa is very limited. This conversation, we had it at the SC for All forum in Kigali, and I mean it was a very broad conversation. But I want to ask you now about AllOn as an impact investor. Has been leading, funding the sector. Like you said, some of the big players we see now, AllOn were the early funders of this company, which is good. But now, what are the challenges for local entrepreneurs to raise funding, and what has been the issue from your experience leading AllOn on this investment over the years?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in any new sector, the kind of the investment ecosystem at that ideation and angel stage has to be developed.
Okay.
And so we've basically had to help create that with other partners.
Okay.
Because 5 years ago, if you were Greenwich, there was nowhere to go for that early stage funding, right? And so we put all of that in place. So we do all the way from ideation, angel stage, and these are types of funding that other investors usually wouldn't look at because they do larger ticket sizes. And they're out there waiting to write a $5 to $10 million check, but there's nobody to write the check to. And so we said we got to go lower down and earlier and then invest so that now, after 5 years, now those companies are ready.
Wow.
So one thing is just that early stage ecosystem that every new sector you need to develop that. The second thing is there is an unfortunate bias for investors investing in Africa for non-African founders, and it is something that it is one of my biggest frustrations with this sector. And if you go to East Africa and you look at the companies doing solar, almost all of them are not Oyibo people. And all of these international investors will say, oh yeah, I did it. I did 5 Africa deals. And then you look at who they invested in and now all Oyibo people. You'll see the first Kenyan will be like third level in the company. And that can't happen in Nigeria. So those same companies, when they come to Nigeria, the first senior African in their organization is the Nigeria country director. Because they know in Nigeria that thing
will not happen.
No go happen. So I think that is the other thing is, so all of the majority of our companies are Nigerian founded, and so they go to the same investors.
Okay.
Maybe they don't have the right accent, the right schools, the right whatever, the perfect PowerPoint.
Even though they understand the market.
They know the market. But the other guys will get the money and these guys will get the frustration. But in the end of the day, you look at it 5 years later.
Who has delivered?
The ones we invested in that the international investors didn't are the ones that are beating up the ones they did. In fact, many of the ones the Oyibo companies have left, gone bankrupt, messed, So I think it's a lesson learned that, but it is a problem, and I think that we've de-risked a lot of the local companies so that nobody can use that excuse anymore. And then the third is just commercial banks don't fund this space, but commercial banks, and I think it's often a misunderstanding of what their purpose is.
Okay.
Commercial banks are not set up to invest in early stage businesses in an early nascent industry.
Okay.
They have their level of risk appetite just doesn't work there. And so I think we often are very, why don't they put money in? We need it, but it's not what commercial banks do. They invest in larger, more established companies. Now that we're 5 years in, the other day I was with some folks from FCMB, from Wiebe Bank, a couple other banks, and they were talking about how 2 years ago when they would bring a solar opportunity to their risk committee, they would just say, please,
we don't
waste our time. Now the risk committee is saying, bring it. So
they see how it's growing now. They see the sector.
So I think by next year, commercial banks are going to be fighting over the companies to lend. When a year or two ago that wasn't possible. So all of these things are evolving.
So it's a process.
It's a process, but it's going to get better for the.
All right, good. If you're just tuning in, this is Power Solutions. Power Solutions is powered by AllOn, Energy Impact Investment Company, with support from Nigeria Info, your number one talk station. My name is Wisdom, and I've been speaking to Dr. Wiebe Boer, CEO, AllOn. And we have been discussing building the sustainable off-grid sector. Dr. Wiebe is sharing his experience leading AllOn for the last 5 years and all the challenges and what we should expect within the sector for the next couple of years. Okay, you've not missed you've not missed much, so just listen.
So we haven't said anything.
No, there's a lot to get from you, Wiebe. But now let's talk about the AllOn Hub. Before we come back to other question, the AllOn Hub. You talked about how investment have grown from ideation, to angel stage and all of that. So now with the work the hub is doing, where do you see the hub in the next, next 5 years? Because now the hub currently supports about 80 businesses, if I'm correct, 80 businesses. And we speak to a lot of the ideation business on the show every week. And, brilliant ideas, coming out. And you see how the funding they get from AllOn after the incubation program, has been a game changer for them. Yeah. So, but where do you see the hub in the next 5 years? Yeah. And what kind of businesses do you want to come out of the hub?
Right. So let me give a bit of background. So, as you know, AllOn is primarily an impact investment company funded by Shell. So Shell has allocated $200 million to AllOn for the, through 2030. Yeah. So obviously that's a lot of capital. But then the AllOn Hub plays the role of providing non-financial technical support to businesses in the sector. And the hub is funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. So it's the only part of AllOn that's not funded by Shell. And the hub, basically it doesn't invest, but it works with companies to kind of fill the gaps they need to succeed. So if they're an ideation business, and that's a business at the stage where it's ideation, you literally just maybe have an idea, maybe not even a business name, maybe not even a product, and working with partners like the NCIC, Nigeria Climate Innovation Center, Clean Tech Hub in Abuja, and others, they work with these companies to incubate them and help them get from that idea to having a product to go to the market. Then they help at the angel stage with a bit more kind of sophisticated support. So at an angel stage business, again, not investing, but providing expertise through partners like PwC, partners like Denton Law, which is a local law firm, and then there's also a local PR firm called Nelson Reeds. Yeah. And so it depends on what the company needs, but it could be that it's a angel stage business that's really struggling with the marketing component. Okay. Nelson Reeds will come in and provide that to them free of charge. The AllOn Hub covers that. Okay. Or they need some strategy support or some structural advice. PwC will come in. They need some legal advice on a deal or something. Then, and so that's the way it operates. And so all of these companies are then kind of, supported in that way because these are services they probably can't afford as a small company. And because we're doing it almost in bulk, it's also a lower cost. And they get access to expertise that otherwise they wouldn't have access to.
So in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so then, the hub will continue to develop these businesses as they go through. So, I think in 5 years, the hub may not be needed anymore in 5 years. It shouldn't be, because by then the industry should be solid enough that many of the companies that they even started working with at ideation should already be growth businesses, raising 10, 15, 20 million in capital. And then they can afford the services on their own. But I think the hub is a key part of building the ecosystem and providing that wraparound support that these companies need. But it will evolve over time as the companies get bigger and need a different set of support.
Okay, so it's okay to say you're happy with the work the AllOn Hub has done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So Nigeria is a fossil fuel driven economy. We can't help that. I mean, at least up to 80%. Now, developing sustainable off-grid solutions rely on very sound and predictable regulations. And now, how has AllOn helped to provide capacity support to regulators to sort of help shape the laws and policies in the sector?
Right. So AllOn, because we're affiliated with Shell, we don't work directly with government. So it's more we kind of support from a distance what they do. So we funded like the NESG, the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. We funded them to kind of do some advocacy and so on, but we can't do it directly. But I think where we support the government is by kind of letting investors and entrepreneurs know what is actually there. And people who have heard me speak often hear me talk about how this is one sector that the government has actually supported very well in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow. And
have put in place very key regulations like the mini grid regulation, the franchise regulation, and some others. They've also provided $500 million of grant subsidy funding for the developers and the solar home system companies. So it's a lot of support. And while we partner with them on this and we promote it. And so we talk about it all the time so that investors have comfort about coming in here. Entrepreneurs have comfort with trying to grow in this space because, we support the fact that we have seen what these regulations do and how it opens up the industry and keeps your investment safe. And we've had, even on this show over time, we've had guests from Cambodia, Indonesia, India, East Africa, even Mexico talk about the regulation in
how
Nigeria.
Good it
is really solid, and it's something they want to emulate. So I think that's one area, and that's part of why this sector has taken off. It's not just the private sector investing and the donors and all that. The government has played a big role in this and will continue to do so.
This may not be a good time to go into some of the regulations because even though people have commended it, there have been some people who have come to say, look, there are some loopholes that we think the government needs to fix. But because of time, we'll move faster on that. Now, let's talk about skills for the sector. 5 years ago, there are some skills or some roles that there was nobody to fill because nobody understood how the sector was. So now equipping the workforce for the renewable energy sector. In the last 5 years, do you think we now have the right workforce, to fill the talent gap? For one, I do communications now in the sector. 5 years ago, I never knew this sector even existed, to even come into it. But now, do you think 5 years later, generally, this gap is being filled?
It is, but there's a lot of work to do. And one of the obstacles is people somehow assume that to get into renewable energy, you have to be an engineer of some kind or electrical engineer or whatever. I have a PhD in history. I don't have any engineering or any finance background at all. You learn it, right? And so almost everybody in this industry that you look at, in AllOn, I think we have 2 engineers and we're the largest investor in this space. That's true. Because it's a new sector, so everyone can kind of come in from whatever background and learn it quite quickly. However, there's as the sector grows, there's going to be a need for tens of thousands of skilled solar installation people, people who know how to operate the solar systems and all that. And there are training programs. We had one that we did with Rubitech Academy.
Rubitech, correct.
There's also one now that we're doing with the Energy Training Company, which
Energy Talent Company.
Oh, sorry, Energy Talent Company. Yeah, and theirs is more online, so it's a bit more scalable. And there's other programs like that. But that, so if you're a young person listening and you're thinking, okay, I don't have a job or, school is on strike, go take one of these courses. And it's like 5,000 hours. It's not expensive. Go take one of these courses, equip yourself, and you can now get into this sector, on that level and then rise. But I think so that's coming. And I think, people just need to go out and get the training and do it and get ready for it. And then companies themselves that are growing are also training their own people and all that. So that's happening. But I think where the biggest gap is going to be, so many of the companies leading this space are led by young, inexperienced entrepreneurs. And often you'll find, and if you look at, tech companies in even Silicon Valley, you see this pattern of the entrepreneur starts it, gets it going, but then at some point you need to bring in some outside expertise. to kind of help you. And so I think that's one thing that will happen in the next little while. And it can't be that the companies start poaching from each other, because that doesn't help. We actually need to go outside. And probably to telecoms, to the sector, to like the sector not of like telecom infrastructure. For the solar home system companies, you can probably go to like FMCG companies, because it's all about mass market marketing and sales and distribution. And so we need to build that sort of C-level management capacity in this space by bringing in talent from other sectors that have kind of been where we are now 10 years ago. And then bring them in and add that expertise. Otherwise, that will be one of the constraints of growth, will management capacity to scale and continue to scale.
Wow, there's so much to get from you, but time will not permit. I mean, we need an hour for this conversation. I wish we had an hour, but we don't.
Well, Mimo can just let us keep going.
If she was to kick me away,
you want, I'll read the news and then I'll continue after.
Well, it sounds like a good deal. I'll just go home from here.
All right. So I have two questions. We'll answer in 2 minutes before we go. The first question is the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. What role do you think they can play for the uptake of renewables in the country?
Yeah, so industry associations are always very important, and our RIAN is probably the biggest. There's a few other smaller renewable energy associations, but my first challenge is, guys, just get together.
Let's come together. Just have one.
Just one. And RIAN is quite well known. I mean, they work very closely with REA. They're very close with like the Senate and House committees on power. They I think represent 150 companies in the space, so almost all the key players. And they've also kind of added a layer of, often when you're looking for a solar solution, you don't know the sector, and so you go with. But what you need to do is make sure that whoever you're going with is a member of RIAN, because then you can be sure that there's a level of quality. Because they're sort of like peer, they won't allow others who are RIAN members to deliver bad, shoddy products and all that, because they don't want to make the industry's reputation bad. So RIAN also kind of helps provide that sort of self-regulation as well.
Super. All right. If you're just joining, I mean, we're rounding up already. This is Power Solutions. My name is Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo, and my guest in the studio today is Dr. Wiebe Boer, CEO of AllOn, and we have been discussing building the sustainable off-grid sector. So much to get from Dr. Wiebe, but unfortunately we're out of time. We have to wrap up now. But before I let you go, Dr. Wiebe, you're leaving now to go run a university.
Right.
Yes. Why are you leaving us? Why?
I had two options, right? I was going to go become Johanna Megona and become the governor of Plateau. That was one option. No, but in this case, it's the university I went to as an undergraduate. My wife went there. My father went there. My mother went there.
Amazing.
The founder of the university 150 years ago was my great-grandfather's cousin. So it's like there's a long, deep connection. And the church that owns the university was the church that sent my parents as missionaries to Nigeria for 30 years.
This connection is...
So it's like it's sort of like my own... people have called me home. But I know where my real home and where my real heart is. So Nigeria is still very much part of my life and my story going forward. But really, running a university gives me a chance to continue to develop young people. And I think that for me is what's very exciting.
Are we going to be seeing a connection with Calvin University and Nigeria and the sector or anything? Are we going to be seeing that?
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Time's up.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Until next week again, we'll come with another guest.
All right.
My name is Wisdom. It's been fun doing this.
Thanks, Wisdom.
All right.
Lead the conversation.
We black people must understand what is really going on.
Import milk, sugar, toothpicks, toothpaste, handkerchief, pencil. We don't make.
Presenting the facts and access to pour out your mind.
Every time you bring in a shipload of rice, you also bring in a shipload of unemployment, because you are transferring your wealth to sustain other economies.
So let's look at an Africa that must be free to take care of herself, an Africa that's free from exploitation in broad daylight.
They need jobs. They are children. They've graduated. They've come back home to begin a second child because there's no factory to employ them.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.